All right, well, welcome everybody to the Humble Warrior Podcast. We're excited that you're with us today. We are just here on a rainy, cold SoCal morning, which is obviously not normal, and it's a great morning to be recording a podcast, I think. So I am joined by two special guests to our podcast. You guys have been on before. We talked about relationships and marriage, and it was easily the best podcast we've ever had,
of course,
bar none.
Yeah.
And people have just been like begging us to bring you guys back. So we finally obliged, and so we're here with Hannah Paulson and Karina Phillips. These two are amazing. They help lead almost every ministry in our church, and are super involved with youth and young adults and greeting and emceeing and kids ministry, and the list goes on and on. And so we are super grateful for them, and just excited to be here with you ladies this morning. It's going to be a good one. So I just want to start just a brief update on you guys. Hannah, what's going on in your life? Obviously, you're getting married very soon. I saw the countdown to your wedding that you posted, and I was like, oh crap, because I'm in this wedding, and even I like. So how are you feeling? What's going through your mind?
Man, yeah. It's like a little over a month until the wedding, and I'm like, oh, there's so much to do. But
there's not, because she's had the entire wedding planned for like 4 months now.
It feels like there's a lot to do still, and like no time. But yeah, it's just a month, and we're just trying to get all the little details put together, and hopefully it doesn't rain that day. That's my biggest prayer right now is no rain, and if it does, we'll make the best of it. And,
yeah, we will.
That's right.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and pretty much the whole church is going to be there, so it's going to be great.
I think that the wedding dance would be a lot more fun if it was raining.
It's true.
I think that would add to like the special feeling,
Yeah. You won't forget it if it's raining.
That's right.
It's true.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we're excited for you, and Karina and I are both in their wedding and getting ready to do bachelorette trips and bachelor parties and all kinds of all the fun stuff is happening soon, and then we get to the boring stuff, which is the actual wedding.
Just getting married. That's so
boring. But no, we're very excited for you and looking forward to it. Karina, what's going on with you? How are you? How are the kids?
I'm doing so good.
So good.
So good. But my kids are great, and parenting and all that jazz. And then currently just hanging out here often.
A lot.
A lot.
Yeah. Yeah. How has it been for you, not to put you on the spot, but how's it been for you, like, being a parent right now in terms of, like,
everything that's
you're homeschooling, you and everybody else is homeschooling and doing really unconventional things for school and for activities. How's that been?
It's been different. I mean, we pulled my kids from the Ohio Unified School District at the beginning of March, and just for our own sanity more than anything else.
Yeah.
And I think that was a great decision, actually.
Yeah.
It's been super difficult just juggling school and work and social life, but I think that we just got back to the basics and to some faith-based curriculum, at least for this year, and we reevaluate in March so that if they go back, I can get that paperwork in. And yeah, I just think it's been okay. It's been, and that's all you can really hope for right now is for the okay. Mm-hmm. They are coming to the Good News Club here on Thursdays, and that's been awesome.
Yeah.
Because they get to hang out with other kids that they normally probably wouldn't hang out with, and they're kids. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they've been interacting that way. And then neighbor kids and stuff like that, and that's been fun. Mm-hmm. And it's also been kind of freeing. You were homeschooled.
I was.
Yeah. So it's like kind of cool to like be able to, my parents live in Arizona. So if we want to just go, we just go.
Yeah.
If we want to go to breakfast on Friday, we can just go to breakfast on Friday.
Yep. Totally.
Do our schoolwork when we get back. And
shout out Allison's still open.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, I think it's homeschooling often gets a bad rap specifically from kids who have been homeschooled. And it's true that it can be an isolating thing. It can be something that kids come out and they have underdeveloped social skills and they have underdeveloped relational skills and stuff like that. But I think if you do it right and you still, send your things to things like the Good News Club. Shout out Good News Club.
Yeah.
Thursdays, every week here, we have a really cool program. We have some faithful ladies in our valley that put on this program for kids. It's I think it's 2 hours.
2 to 4.
2 to 4 Thursdays here at the church.
It's like
and
kindergarten
it's great.
through
It's great.
whatever.
So we have that for kids. We have youth group here. We have Jad in the morning. I mean, we got things. There are still opportunities. So when you're homeschooling, I think it's just important that you force, not even like request, but you just force your kids to go out and be social.
Yeah.
And I think that's something my parents did really well. We did karate and we did sports and we did all these different things that forced us to kind of still get out and still be social.
Yeah.
And so I think it can really work. And so any parents out there that are homeschooling right now, just an encouragement that it's possible to raise really, really, really great, God honoring kids who also are not weirdos. So it's possible. So I will encourage you.
If Karina's kids weren't social, I don't know what she would do.
Yeah.
No, for real.
She's like the most social person I know.
Yeah. So
No choices.
yeah. So speaking of kids, our podcast today is going to be just kind of on youth and specifically young girls. And I'm just going to kind of facilitate today a conversation with you guys about what are young girls facing today, and often I think we've talked a lot about young men, and I think one of the consistent things that always comes up with young men is like sensory overload in terms of like you can't escape. It's hard to even escape porn. It's hard to even escape seeing women in ways we don't want to see them as Christian, God-honoring men. It's hard to even escape that. So we've talked a lot about that issues with young boys and different issues that young men are facing. But I want to focus like on young girls these days and what they're facing. And I think that there's a lot. I think there's a lot we could talk about. But just kind of off the top of your guys' head, when you hear that question of what are young girls facing today, what do you think? What do you think some of the biggest things that they're walking through in high school and in middle school? And you guys, are working with youth all the time. So
yeah, I mean, I think that social media is like the worst for youth age kids right now. I think when I was in high school, it was kind of Facebook was becoming a new thing. And
Not
so,
me.
I know. It was. I got Facebook, I think, in like 10th grade. I didn't have MySpace because I was not allowed to have that. Go, Carolyn.
Shout out Carolyn Paulson.
So social media was super new to me, and even at that point, like, it was not as like scary as it is now. It's just so many things are allowed to be on the internet, and it's terrifying, and there's so much comparison that goes on. I mean, I'm 27 years old and have a great fiance that loves me and thinks I'm beautiful, but I still like compare myself to these models that I see on Instagram. And so, my brain is fully developed. So being like a 13, 14-year-old and looking at that and just trying to constantly live up to that, like, type of body type or, that level of influence is just so scary. It's so sad. And so that's like, I think my main goal is reminding these girls that they are so beautiful and so loved, and that that is just a fantasy. Everything that they see on Instagram is just such a fantasy, and it's not really real life. Because even if that, they're living that cool life that they show on Instagram, they have just as many struggles as we're having as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I think, it seems to me that a lot of it comes from, I think that young girls, and I don't even know how to say this other than just saying it, but I think that fathers have just failed in our generation. And if you're a father out there and you're a great one, we honor you. We thank you for being that. And I think all three of us had great fathers, and for the most part, that really loved us and did a good job. But I think a lot of the girls, what I see in our youth group is I see girls who are desperate for attention and for value from men.
Absolutely.
And I think one thing I would just say to young girls, is like, the kind of men that are going to want you because you look like that, or want you because you act like that, you don't want to be anywhere near them.
Exactly.
You don't want to be anywhere near those guys. And let me just encourage you that there are young men of God out there. If you're a young person, or even if you're older, there are men of God out there that are seeking intimacy. They're seeking something that's real and genuine, that still exists.
Yeah.
And so if you're single, whether you're young or you're older, man, there are that still exists. Chivalry still exists within the kingdom of God. Amen.
Yeah.
And so I think that's something. But and I like that you speak to social media, because I think that that's just such a huge plague in our culture, and I think that's a cultural pressure that is affecting girls' body image. And so, I know that both of you, have struggled with body image in the past. And what does that look like for you? What does that struggle look like for you? How have you guys overcame that, in your lives? And what could be some practical tools like for young girls that are struggling with that? Not necessarily to overcome it completely, but to fight that battle. And see themselves as valuable and beautiful in the eyes of God. And
I think that, I'm 33, and I think I still struggle with that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't think it's something that stops.
Yeah. And if I can scoot back for a hot second about social media, I think it even, I see that in our junior high kids, but I also see it in my own life, as just moms. She's talking about models, but I've had to unfollow mom friends.
Yeah.
Because I think,
The comparison.
your life looks so much like you have it all together.
Yeah.
And I definitely don't. So in order for me to combat those thoughts, I've got to unfollow you. I've got to put my own guards up. I've got to put my own boundaries when it comes to what I'm looking and what I'm letting in through my eyes or through my ears or through whatever. If it's not edifying, if it's not feeding me or encouraging me in the right way, then sometimes it looks really hard, right? Because we don't want to unfollow so-and-so, or we don't want to unfollow this influencer, or we don't want to maybe take a step back from this group of people, or whatever the case may be. But you have to look inward and say, is this encouraging me, or is this discouraging me?
That's good.
And to focus really upwardly and say, what does the Father say about who I am? And because ultimately he's the one that made me, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So, and everything else is good stewardship. And that includes putting up those boundaries and it doesn't mean loving other people, but it also means just making sure that you're good mentally.
Totally.
Yeah, for sure.
First and foremost, because nothing else is going to change if you're not good mentally.
Yeah.
You can work on your physical all you want, but if you have a crappy mental, it's not going to change anything.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that was the beginning of last year. It's so dumb, but it's not dumb. It's great that I unfollowed all the Kardashians because I felt like their body type is unattainable for me, at least, because you have to have money to have that body.
Yeah.
And so that was something that I would scroll through social media and I would see their perfect bodies. And I'm like, I want that.
Yeah.
And it was just so disheartening because I was like, I'm never going to have that. And so that was something I just had to unfollow. And I had since then, it totally helped my the way I think about my body. And I still like, I have like body dysmorphia. And so it's like trying, like, no matter how skinny I get, I would still think that I'm huge, you know? And so it's something that you constantly have to work through, and being willing to get help for it. You know, I think that we're definitely this, like in this day and age that we're trying to really push the mental health thing, which I think is awesome. You know, it used to be something that was kind of taboo. If you had depression or you were bipolar, it was like, oh, there's something really wrong with you. When majority of the people in this world suffer with those things. And so, and especially in younger kids these days, you know, I think that they're afraid to speak up when they're feeling some type of way because they don't want to be judged. And I think giving them a platform to like be comfortable enough to talk to someone about that is so important.
Absolutely.
So
Hannah sent me this thing the other day. Can I read it?
Yeah.
It says, I had a moment the other day that really changed my perspective on how I view my physical appearance. I was thinking no one has ever impacted me by being beautiful or having a perfect body. It might get my initial attention or even be inspiring, but it's never been the reason I remembered them. I'm impacted by people for their kindness, their loyalty, their patience, their generosity, their vulnerability, etc. I've never said she changed my life because she was pretty and skinny. We spend so much time worrying about the thing that means the least to people. And I thought that was super cool. And she even said, like, I think we both need to hear this.
Yeah.
And it was really good, you know, and I think it hit me at a good time. And obviously she knew, you know, but it was, something
That's good.
I think has stuck with me for a couple days now, you know?
Yeah, you know, and on that, Joel said something yesterday that's just been rocking my world, and it was just such a small comment, but I was like walking out this door. We were just doing whatever we were doing, working, and walking out this door, and he said to me, he's like, I think we really underestimate how much these kids look up to us. And he's talking about the youth, you know, the youth leaders.
Yeah.
And I have, and it's not really been much of a thing for me in the last few years because I just started to care a lot less about trying to be cool. But there was a time where like I really cared about trying to be cool.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because I necessarily even wanted the kids to like think I was cool. It's because I wanted to be able to have that open door with them to really be able to impart something. And so I really, you know, it was something that was a priority to me to try to like dress a certain way and kind of, you know, speak a certain way and be up to date on like what's going on in youth culture and stuff. And I think there's a place for all of that.
Yeah.
But I think that speaks to the fact that like, and if you're a parent out there, like, you know, young people are just absolute sponges. They're just, they're absorbing everything. This is why so many like people grow up to be young adults and youth age kids, and they look back and like look at their parents and like think, oh, they screwed me up. You know, it's like, and it's because, and sometimes that's fair and sometimes it's not, you know, and I think sometimes like parents are human too. And it's easy to talk badly about your parents. Wait till you're doing it though. I'm learning that in the in the infancy of that right now, you know. I have so much renewed respect for my parents now that I am one, and realizing that it's not easy, but I think that we can't underestimate how much these kids look up to us as parents, as Christians, as youth leaders, as any of you out there that have any influence in a child's life. They're looking to you, and they're not looking to you to be cool. They're not looking to you to be relevant. They're looking for someone who's genuine and kind. And I look back at the youth leaders and the people in my, like you're saying, that really made a difference for me. And it wasn't the people that were cool.
Right.
It was the people who I thought genuinely loved me.
Right. Yeah.
And genuinely wanted the best for me.
I think, you know, youth has been my passion for a long time. That bird just
hit the window.
Just hit the window.
That happens
so
all
sad.
the time. All the time.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So I think it's been a passion of mine for a long time, and I think, you know, it's just the natural way of things. You know, you just change, right?
Yeah.
But I feel that more so this year, and maybe it's my own insecurities that play a role in it. I have fought mentally the idea of not doing things because I'm not comfortable.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of the games for the kids, and a lot of the times I feel inside, don't get on, don't try to do that or don't try to do that. Me personally. And it's not for the kids, it's for you guys.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to look stupid in front of my peers.
Right.
And then I take a step back and I think, if you're not willing, neither are they.
Yeah.
So and too bad I just am who I am and you guys are going to have to love me through it anyways,
Yeah.
So, I would much rather act goofy and be silly and dance and under the tarps, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To be
real.
Yeah, and just to be fun with them.
Totally.
And that's what it's all about for me, is just to be fun with them and make sure that they have that safe place.
Totally.
And I think on the same line, I've really been given the word of intentionality, I think, for 2021. And what does that look like when it comes to youth kids?
Yeah.
Especially those girls, because I think that they really need it. There's a lot more than just body image that I think that they're dealing with. So.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that that's good, because I for parents out there, and a lot of this podcast really is going to be, talking to parents, and even if you're not a parent, maybe you're an aunt or an uncle, or maybe you're leadership over kids in some fashion. Just give your kids a hug. Tell them you love them every day. Every day.
Yeah.
And even when it's awkward, even when they've been rude to you that day, and that's like the nicest way I can put it right now. Even when you don't feel like it, just tell them you love them. Give them a hug. Take them out to for a walk in the meadow. Even if they act like they don't want to and they bellyache and groan about it, let me tell you, they want to.
Yeah.
And those are the things they're going to remember, and have conversations with them about all this stuff.
Yeah.
Don't feel like anything's off limits. Be that authenticity, and I think even like, and I'd be curious to hear what you guys think about this, but, and this is turning more into a parenting podcast than I thought, but which is silly, because we've been like, Karina's the longest time parent here, and two of us are either not a parent or barely have been. So, but I think this is relevant. Like we talk a lot about like we want to shelter kids from stuff,
Yeah.
and we want to shelter them from like, oh, we can't watch certain movies. And like I think when we were growing up, it was a lot more strict than it is now.
Yeah.
And I wonder about that, because like, I think that when I was a kid, I still like, when I view some of the things I wasn't allowed to watch, I'm like, it just seems so silly. Right? Like, but then like, I wonder what impact has the rolling back of that how has that impacted all of us and what we intake? How has that impacted our lives? Has that been a loss of standard? And then the other thing is how much do we want to shelter our kids from certain topics, or how much do we want to address them head on?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to get political, but I will say that 2020 has brought to light a lot of things that Alex Triggs and I, shout out Alex Triggs.
Shout out Alex Triggs.
Alex Triggs and I, we've talked about it, like in the car on the, we usually go out to dinner and chat about our kids and what comes next, and how we think we're failing and all of that really fun stuff. But we were talking about it a couple months ago, and I was saying how the George Floyd and the BLM stuff, it has really brought up conversations, even with my 6 and 7-year-old, where I want them to look back and maybe not, maybe be like surprised that like, oh wow, that was a lot worse than I thought it was, like I lived through that and I didn't feel like the world was going crazy. And I want them to feel that way when they read it, but at the same time, I want them to look back and go, oh, but I remember those conversations with mom.
Yeah.
And we talked about, standing up for things that you believe in, standing up for people who, who need you to stand up for them. What prejudices are, you know what I mean? Like, things like that those conversations were relevant to the time, and yet tried to, for lack of better words, like dumb them down for a 6 and 7-year-old and apply it to their lives. I'm talking playground stuff and things like that, you know, or it's like, those are the issues I'm dealing with 6 and 7-year-olds in 2020,
Yeah.
you know, and yet I'm sitting at JAD on Wednesday mornings and hearing about things that kids are dealing with or that believe will help them, that
Just so worldly.
yeah, that I never ever had to deal with,
Right.
you know. And maybe it does have to go along with that, like there was stricter,
Yeah.
you know, parenting styles, I feel like,
Yeah.
and there were stricter, I don't know, growing up in the church, maybe that helped too, you know, like where, but it's just crazy that I feel like it's almost like I can't relate to them on that level because I didn't go through any of that.
Yeah.
And I can say, like, I'm sitting there with you and with Joel and with Josh, and we all come from different backgrounds, and yet I don't think any of us dealt with things like that.
Yeah.
You know, so it's very interesting to try to navigate not only my own kids through crap, but to navigate junior high and high school kids through stuff that, like, I thought my life was hard.
Yeah.
Then.
I'm not a parent. So I don't, the best I know is how I'm trying to deal with these youth kids. Cause I would consider my childhood extremely sheltered. And I think that's just how the church was. The church wanted to make sure that, like, you didn't deal with any of the scary things outside of this church, you know? And so my parents did what they were told. They were brand new Christians when they had me. And so they were like full force into whatever the church said. And I think in the grand scheme of things, I think it was really good for me. I think, I maybe like, when it came to like social interactions, I might have been delayed a little bit. But I think that I missed out on a lot of like quote unquote childhood trauma, which was good. Like, I think that, like, I had I had 2 loving parents that were just trying to get me through my childhood.
Welcome to parenthood.
Yeah. And the best way that they knew how. And now that we're older, we can have these conversations, and my mom can be like, I think I was a little much on some things, and you can learn from those mistakes that I made and not bring them onto your children when you have them. And then learning how to deal with these kids and youth that I think none of them have been brought up in the church. And if they have, like, maybe 1 or 2, like, we've got all like non-church kids in our youth group that have very absent parents, and so they come to us and like are looking for just some sort of someone to like relieve all of this stress that they have on them due to their home lives and due to this crazy world that they're trying to navigate pretty much on their own. And so if we can just be like a sounding board for them, that's like my biggest goal, is just to let them talk and know that there's no judgment and that none of us are perfect. We all made our mistakes and we're all learning as we go, and just learning to really just love these kids to the best of our ability, because sometimes this is the only love that they're getting, is when they come to JAD and to youth or church. Even if they're at church and they're not really listening to the sermon, they are around people that they know love them.
Yeah. Right. And we've heard more often than not this year that these kids call youth or redemption their safe place. And that's been crazy, you know. And Joel and I have talked about, now that it's your safe place, now what? You know, you can't just sit in your safe place and be still. You know, like, so now that it's your safe place, what are you going to do with it?
Yeah. I think just too on like the whole sheltering thing, and I think the mistake that parents have made And I think the mistake the church pushed for a long time is, like, I think that we absolutely need to shelter our kids, whether they're physically our kids or our kids spiritually speaking. We need to shelter them from things. We need to, like, be controlling what they're watching, be controlling what they're intaking and stuff. But I think the important thing is, like, when a kid comes up, when your kid comes up and asks you, why can't I watch this show? You tell them.
Yeah.
Because it's crap. And so you're gonna take in crap, and then you're gonna put out crap.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And or why can't I go to this person's house? Or why can't I go to this party?
Yeah.
Or why can't I drink that or smoke that?
Yeah.
When they come with those questions, I think for the longest time the response was, because it's wrong.
Yeah.
Or because I said so.
Or because I said so. Right? And there's a time and a place for because I said so.
Totally.
You know, I think sometimes parents feel like hostage to their kids because they don't feel like they can just say, this is the way it is because I'm your parent.
Yeah.
So I think there's a time and place for that. But I also think, like, when it comes to the issues, you know, we should stop kids from intaking things. We should be mindful of what they're intaking and what they're watching and where they are and stuff like that. But it's also really important that when they do come with the questions, that we have good answers for them.
Yeah.
And what that requires is you know, parents and leaders, we need to know the answers.
Yeah.
We need to be listening to podcasts like this, and we need to be reading books, and we need to be sharpening ourselves. So when our kids are asking these questions, we're ready. We're ready to say, no, you can't have sex before you're married, and it's because, and then list off the reasons, the sanctity of marriage and God's design for sex and all this, you know, and that's just one example. But I think that's important that we recognize that we have to be ready and willing to address the issues.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean the answer is going to change. That doesn't mean we should let our kids just watch whatever they want to watch and try to explain to them why it's bad and let them do it anyways, you know, but we absolutely should be talking them through these things at younger and younger ages. The average age that a young boy, I don't know if this applies to girls too, but like the average age of young men will see porn for the first time is 10 years old.
It's actually 8. It's 8,
so
it's like 8 to 12.
That's average. So you're going to have kids that are 8 and you're going to have kids that are 12, but process that for a second.
Yeah.
Your son,
Yeah.
you know, we've talked about this, and
We have.
your son is almost there,
Yeah.
and it's so scary. But that's why at younger and younger ages we just have to be ready to have those conversations.
You know, we've talked about it, like you said, and I think that for me, it's super important for that sin, you know, to be out in the open. I think that's where sin thrives. It's like mold, right? Like it just thrives in the dark and then in the cold, and you know. And so I'm like, let's just bring it to light now, so that it's not an issue, you know, or so that I can teach you how to combat that, or whatever the case may be. For whatever sin it is, you know. You brought up porn, but it could be anything, you know.
Right.
And I think it goes just along with these youth kids too. And I can make comparisons about just being in the world, but not of it. And don't you think that's what it really comes down to, is that spiritual battle that we are constantly facing as kids, right? As my 4-year-old, as my 8-year-old, as these 13 and 15 and, you know, year olds, and also as adults, we have to like constantly be putting on that armor and debating back and forth. Yeah. You know, we've been talking a lot in my house about loving each other well, and you know, and when we're not, then it's a heart issue. So what's going on in your heart that you're treating each other that way? Why are you getting angry? Tell me what, you know what I mean? Like what made you feel that angry that you would respond that way? And if you're not thinking and just responding, let's talk about that too, because that's not okay either. You know, being sober-minded, being peaceful, you know what I mean? Like these things that the Bible teaches on, like how are we applying those to our sibling to sibling relationships when they take our toys? Or our friend to friend relationships when they don't make the best decisions? Or, you know, and one thing I've learned about these youth kids right now is that like they are quick to drop each other and pick each other back up. Like, oh, they're toxic. Oh, we're not friends with them anymore. And it's like, if you're in a group of people and you screw up, you're out.
Yeah.
And it's that simple. And that's not teaching them, like the sanctity of relationships in general, you know, and to put in the effort, and that's setting them up for crappy marriage and crappy relationships later on as adults and things like that, where, you know, then you have kids and young adults who are trying to learn that as adults that never learned it as kids.
Right.
I just think there's a lot. There's just a lot, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, I think at least from when the way we were brought up, it caused a lot of like shame. And so now I'm learning to like release those things that I went through so that shame doesn't take over me.
Yeah.
And because it can be like so loud.
Right.
And it can just take over your life and can just paralyze you if you're not willing to open up to the people around you, give it up to the Lord, because, like I said, none of us are perfect. And so learning to just forgive yourself and just know that the Lord's forgiving you, and just not to hold on to that, because it will literally it could just end you.
On that note, I mean, I will say that I think last year, 2 years ago, I really struggled personally, you know, as an adult with that, right? With forgiving myself for a lot of different things.
Right.
But when you take a step back and realize that, like, the Lord has already forgiven you for those things, man, what a slap in the face, right? To say, like, thanks for forgiving me, but I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
Right? And like,
Right.
like my opinion matters more.
How silly
right?
would it be if we did that like with another person?
Right.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, thanks for your forgiveness, but I'm not there yet. So
I'm not ready to be forgiven.
Can you hold on to that? Because that'd be great. Like, it's just crazy to me that we can even hold on to something that, like, God's like, nah, actually, I've already taken care of that for you.
Yeah.
You know, like, I
Yeah,
washed
for
it
sure.
clean already.
Yeah, it's
Wild.
me and Josiah are going through our marriage counseling right now, and it makes you bring up stuff from your past and like really like dig in deep to some crap. And I mean, we've had some hard conversations that I really didn't think I was going to have, you know, because it was stuff about my past that I was like, it's in the past, I don't need to talk about it.
Yeah.
But I'm getting married, and this is stuff that we have to talk through so that we're both on the same page. But it's been difficult, but it's been so good to strengthen our relationship and to know that God's in the center of this, and that he has forgiven all the stuff that we've been through. No matter if the world says that they don't forgive us,
Right.
or they put a label on us, because the only person that really matters is God.
Yeah.
And releasing all that shame is the biggest thing. And I think that's a lot. You know, kids are so quick to put a label on each other.
Yeah.
And themselves.
It's just making sure that these kids know that label is something that the world's given you, but the Lord gives you a label of daughter,
Yeah.
or of son,
Yeah.
or, you know, just you're loved, and you're not all these derogatory labels that the world's been putting on you, because
Right.
these kids are so quick to just be like, oh, you're this and you're that, and like,
Right.
you know, and so it's just reminding them that you need to put your trust in the Lord, and he's the one that only matters. And so I think that's been my biggest thing, is just reminding these kids. It's like, and I think we're so repetitive, but I think it needs to be with this age, because their like attention span is so small, you know? And so it's like, we might feel like we're repeating ourselves, but for them, it's like, it's a new day. And so we have to keep drilling this into their mind, that they are so loved and they are so beautiful,
Right.
and that their past does not define who they are right now.
Yeah.
Preach.
I think I have too this, you know, desire to control
Yeah.
their environment.
Yeah.
Even though they're not
Right.
ours. Like it's easier for me to control Jordan and Eden and Ronan's environment because I'm their mom to the best of my ability. Right. Which even that I like struggle back and forth with. How much do you control and how much do you not, you know,
Right.
because I think that that's an epidemic all in itself.
Right.
You know, you got to let kids just be kids sometimes and
Right.
figure their own stuff out with their own friends instead of helicoptering in and telling, you know, figuring it out for them or whatever the case may be. Let them climb that ladder on their own, you know,
Yeah.
like, so I do struggle back and forth with those things as well. But with our youth kids, it's like, you don't get to go home with them.
Yeah.
You don't get to like be around them all the time. And then you see them making TikTok videos in the parking lot or flipping off the camera for their Instagram, whatever the
Yeah.
case may be. And you're
Yeah.
like, what? Did you not learn anything from us? Are we not making any impact at all? You know?
Yeah.
But then to take that step back and go, okay, like Hannah was saying, just the repetitiveness of like, even though those things are dumb, you know,
Yeah.
and you'll recognize that as you get older, hopefully.
Yeah.
I'm still here.
Yeah.
I'm still going to be here.
Yeah.
I'm still going to walk you through it. We had like a moment in youth group, you know, a little bit of drama. And then a couple of us had to talk to a couple kids. One, you know, like 3-on-2, which sounds like we bullied them, but we didn't. But you know, to like kind of check in with them and all this different stuff. And our girl, it was one girl at one point, and our girl said, "I thought you guys were kicking us out." You know, like as we left, she was like, "Oh, this went a lot better than I thought." Like, you know, and she was like, "I thought you were going to tell us we couldn't come back. I thought you were going to kick us out." And I thought, "Oh man, like that's all it would take."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's all it would take is just this one mess up or this one drama. You know what I mean? Like, and you thought that like because we brought you aside,
Yeah.
you were out. And
Yeah.
she's like a girl that, you know, is with us all the time.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And yet like because she's at youth, because she's at JAD, because she's at church on Sunday, like even in that, even though she has like real genuine personal relationships with most of us, you know, she thought, "Oh man, I'm out.
Yeah.
That doesn't actually matter."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just like, I want that to not be the
Yeah.
case. I want it to always be,
Yeah.
you know, man, that sucks, but you're still in
Yeah.
and we still love you and we're still here.
Yeah. I mean, the world is so quick to like brush you off. I'm done
Yeah.
with you. And it's totally like right now is that whole like cancel culture.
Yeah.
And it's like you make one mistake and you're done.
Yeah.
Like you see all these like celebrities that like their past from Twitter posts from 10 years ago is brought up and
And they're done.
They're done. And now you're like, where did they go?
Yeah.
And that's what these kids are seeing. It's like you have one mess up and you're out.
Yeah.
And so
And they do it to each other.
yeah, oh, it's totally
Yeah.
because that's what they're learning.
Yeah.
That's what they're learning. It's like you burn someone and you're done with them. You kick them out. And it's
Yeah.
like trying to remind them that like no, you need to forgive.
Yeah.
And be gentle because like I said, you don't know what they're going through.
And we are all human, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
if every time one of us stepped on each other's toes, guaranteed that 3 of us would not be friends. You know what I mean? Like, you know, but it's like
Yeah.
pushing through that and having differences
Right.
differences of opinion
Yeah.
and knowing that like when things get hot and heated you're still going to show up the next day.
Yeah.
You know, like it doesn't actually matter because at the end of the day
Right.
I love you just as much as you
Right.
love me and we're going to still do life together.
Yeah.
You
And
know.
and remembering that like people change.
Yeah.
Like I am different. I'm absolutely different than who I was 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I've lost friends because of it. Because I was living a lifestyle that was not glorifying the Lord.
Yeah.
And some people are like, "Well, now you're not fun." And I'm like, "Well, I think I'm really
Well,
fun."
then they don't know you very
Yeah.
well.
But it's like learning to God, I just lost my train of thought. Learning,
Canceled.
You're done.
you know, learning to I really lost my train of thought. Sorry.
Just learning to push through.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
learning to push through and learning to continue to have those relationships
Absolutely.
despite the
yeah.
despite it all, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just told my mom the other day, I'm super lucky to have the group of friends that I have now, and I feel like it came along. I think we talk about this all the time. Like, it came along right at the perfect time.
Yeah.
And it's the first time in my life that I have a group of friends that I don't feel I will be without anytime soon.
Yeah.
And I think that I've always had a group of friends, but it's always changed, you know. And the Lord has really provided for me in that way, because I'm social, because I need it, you know. But this group is different, and I think it's because we encourage each other to, you know, look upward before we look outward. And I think that we spur each other on spiritually, as you know, as well as socially, you know.
I think that the only reason my relationship with the Lord is as strong as it is because it's being backed by you guys. You know, I think when I got involved with young adults at the beginning of last year, I was in a dark place, and I was like ready to like give up on my even having a relationship with the Lord, because it was like I didn't have anyone that was helping me. You know, I can go to my parents because they've got a great relationship with the Lord and stuff, but like there's a big age difference. I think like trying to, you know, relate with them is different.
Yeah.
And in regards to walking with the Lord at a young age. And so having you guys to, you know, come alongside me and Josiah when we're like on a fall has been so important for my walk. And just strengthening my beliefs. You know,
and you know, for parents that are out there listening and stuff, if that's not a reminder, you got to get your kids into youth group. You know, you got to get your kids to the Good News Club. You got to get your kids in this stuff, because like, you know, we just talked about this last night. Like, it was such a coincidence that our young adults group even really formed the way it did. Like, you know, like Hannah came, like you came when it was really early.
Hey guys,
on,
can I
and
come?
It was super awkward, and we had very few people coming in. It would have been really easy for you to just write it off and say, you know, I'm never going back there again. That was weird. And for you, like, you know, Karina,
I'm old.
like you were out of our age range at the time, and
at the time,
not that you are now, but you know, like we were doing a rooted study, and you had the story behind you getting into the group is that we were doing a rooted study as young adults, and we were planning as a church to have multiple studies go at the same time, but there wasn't enough people that signed up in order to fill it up. And I knew I didn't know you well, but I knew enough about you that I was like, I think you'd probably fit in, you know, be able to do the study with us. And so I just threw it out like, hey, you know, if you want to do Rooted with us, we'd love to have you. And you said okay, and then like that decision
then I never left.
has been this big thing. But that's like, it's so important that we understand the influence that we have on kids.
And I was thinking about it yesterday, and I told my mom last night, I want to encourage too, even if they're not your kids.
Yeah.
You know, I told her, speaking of our group, just how lucky I was to feel like my kids weren't missing out on, how do I say this without sounding rude to other people? Let me backtrack for a second and just say that, like, I don't need a boyfriend because I have male friends in my life that I feel like are freaking awesome, right? And I feel like they are so influential on my kids specifically. Like I was pointing out, you know, Joel is always down to like hang out with my kids or take my kids with him when he goes squirting tea beers, you know. You just took all of my kids on a bike ride on Sunday, and I didn't go. You did, you know. They can be playing out front, and Josiah's right there with them, you know.
Because he's a family man.
He's a family man. Shout out to the family men. You know, and Dondo's always down to hang out with them. Like, I just feel like they don't lack in their male influence, and yet they're not your guys' kids. Right. They don't have to. We could be friends, and you don't have to influence my children. And yet, I mean, Hannah and I have talked about this too. Like, I always tell her, when you have babies, I will love your babies like you love mine. You know? And that's my promise to her, because I feel like man, Emily and Hannah, they love on my kids in a way that they don't have to.
Yeah.
And so my encouragement in that is that even if you don't have kids, or even if you do have kids, the buck doesn't stop there.
Right.
Like, you are still called to love on others well, and to love on kids who need it or who don't need it,
Yeah.
you know? And I'm super grateful for that. And I think you guys don't even know how big of a volume that speaks to not just me and my 3, but to others around us, because man, it takes a village, and my village is pretty freaking cool, you know?
Yeah. Well, and that's
Humbly,
like,
of course.
for people that are listening, like, if you are just a Christian, you go to church, maybe you're a young adult, maybe you're older, and maybe your kids are out of the house and you're in a different stage of life. Man, like you were saying, are these kids in our youth ministry almost all of them are from just absolutely 100% broken homes.
Yeah.
And we have a really cool opportunity as the church to be family to these kids. And let me just tell everybody who's listening right now that cannot just be the 6 of us at youth group.
Yeah.
If we are going to impact the youth of our valley, if we're going to impact the kids in our valley, we're talking about young girls, and we're talking about body image, and we're talking about boys with pornography, and boys with comparison, and girls with comparison. If we're going to combat this stuff, let me tell you what you can do. On Sunday, just pick one.
Yeah.
Word.
Pick one kid.
Yeah.
And say, and start a conversation with them. And they might think that you're weird. They're probably going to think you're weird.
Yeah.
Right?
Probably.
But pick one kid and just get a conversation going.
Yeah.
And or if you're hearing this and you're stirring your heart, then come to youth group, and or even with the kids in your own circle, like your friends' kids and your kids, and let's just invest and be passionate about being Jesus to these kids.
Yeah.
And to the best of our ability, because they're not going to learn from what we say. I look back at youth group when I was younger, and I think I don't remember a single sermon. I don't remember any sermon that my youth pastor preached.
Yeah.
I don't remember anything that any of my youth leaders taught me.
Yeah.
But I remember who they were.
Totally.
I remember moments where I was weeping in tears, and getting a hug from my youth pastor. And I remember moments like that, and those were the things that impacted. I mean, almost in tears now.
Yeah.
Those were the things that impacted me. It wasn't what they taught me. It wasn't profound words. It wasn't.
Right.
It wasn't any of the things. It was just having people that were there for me.
Absolutely.
And in that way, they modeled who Jesus is to us.
Yeah.
Jesus is our provider. He's our healer. He's our comfort in times of need. He gives us peace. He gives us understanding, when we feel lost. And so in that way, we can model that for our students. We can be that for kids in our valley, whether it's your kids or other kids. Man, what an incredible opportunity that we have to do that right now, because so many parents are failing, and so many, non-Christian families, like kids are coming to youth group right now, and we have kids coming on Sundays to church, and I'm sure a lot of you have kids in your own circle and world that they're coming just because they're bored.
Yeah. Or because their friends are here, or
they're not. A lot of them aren't coming for the right reasons at all.
No.
But what an opportunity, for us to be able to impact them in that way, and just by loving on them, giving them a hug, and just being that shoulder, and it's difficult. It's difficult to do that. It's difficult to make time for it. And we all know everybody's busy and got stuff going on, but I think it's such a worthy investment for
Absolutely.
Christians to be committed to that.
It's interesting because I can remember, I don't know the statistics, so don't quote me on it, but I do know that a lot of kids after, as they go off to college, their numbers drop significantly when it comes to the Christian faith.
Yeah.
And it kind of bleeds into that young adults thing, right? There's a huge gap of kids between, that's why you have ministries like young adults, even though ours is a little bit older.
Right.
where kids are like out of high school but not quite like ready for women's ministry or men's ministry.
Yeah.
And so you have that young adults group, but not everywhere does, and those numbers drop off significantly. So if we're not investing in kids now,
Yeah.
right? If we're not investing in those little kids in children's church on Sundays, or little kids in our neighborhoods and things like that, if we're not investing now up through junior high, high school, like I see those numbers dropping even more significantly. You know, we have, like you were saying, this huge opportunity to invest now, so that even if that gap is taken, that they'll come back around as adults.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if we can change that gap,
Yeah.
because it's college and it's crazy and it's, you know, all these different things. Shame, you know, probably a lot of it is attached to that because of those years. But I think that, again, if just investing now, I think that even with that gap, they'll come back around because they know the truth in their heart.
Yeah.
Right.
You know.
Well, even like the example you were talking about with that student is, and feeling like they were going to get kicked out. The reason why they felt that way is because they know the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And whether it's because we taught them or because, you know, we all have that inner, like, we're designed by God.
Yeah.
So that at the deep down in almost all of us, there's that we know that what we're doing is wrong. We know that we're not supposed to be living this way, you know. And so that girl, the reason why she thought that is because she knows.
Yeah.
She knows.
Yeah.
And so we don't always have to be shoving the truth down their throats.
Right.
We just need to be loving them where they're at and reminding them of where they could be.
Right.
You know, and I just think about, like, man, if you're out there and you got a single mom in your neighborhood or, you know, a family that's struggling, like, I can't even begin to imagine the impact that could be if go knock on the door and say, hey, could I just, like, play basketball with your kids, throw a football around, like, you know, like just that might make such a huge impact because so many people are just struggling, and you got, you know, especially with single parents and stuff that are struggling just to meet ends meet, let alone like actually love on their kids and do things with their kids and all that, and so, you know, like, just have that perspective, you know, to go to be thinking about the youth in our nation, because let me tell you, like it's tough. We see it every week. How many weeks have we finished youth group and thought this is just a mess, you know? And I mean, it's not because of anything other than these kids are just broken.
Yeah.
And they come from broken families.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to, like, see that as an obstacle that we have to overcome, to see that as a even just as a challenge, but I think we should see it as an opportunity.
Absolutely.
And see it as a chance to be able to make that impact where no one else can.
And I think that, like, ultimately, like, my desire is that, like, we make enough of an impact in these kids that, like, they would encourage their parents to come to church.
Amen.
Yeah.
You know, if we can't get through to their parents, we can get through to them, and then maybe they can get through to their parents, and they can heal that relationship between, you know, parent and child, and make their home a lot more healthy.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think that something else that I struggle with, and I'm not trying to, like, bring up another subject, but something else I struggle with those kids is sometimes holding back truth in order to keep them coming.
Yeah.
You know, instead of saying, like, actually, that's wrong. You know, what you're doing is totally wrong. You know, what you're doing is absolutely not okay, you know? But I think it comes down to those relationships. Have you built those relationships? Are you someone who can speak truth in their life?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
In order to, I don't know, sway them in a different direction and have them still keep coming. And I think more often than not, speaking truth into their life, whether it's right or, you know, like whether it's an encouragement to keep doing what is right, or to say, hey, actually, that's really wrong, and let's talk about it. I think that each of them needs this more than most of the time I assume they do.
Yeah.
And even speaking truth, they'll come back.
Yeah.
You know,
Totally.
because they've recognized this as a place where they can come that's safe.
Yeah.
You know.
We've said this before, and we'll say it again, that like you cannot get someone to live or abide or believe in the truth of God's word until they know God.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's not a youth thing. That's a people thing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're out there trying to, this is a challenge, it's something we talked about before, but if you're out there trying to like shove the truth of Scripture down people's throats that aren't Christians, I don't think you're going to get very far.
Yeah, they're never going to get
This
it.
is why people view Christians as judgmental. This is why people view Christians as they live under this law that's so strict.
Right.
It's because they haven't experienced the Savior that we've experienced.
Right.
Yeah.
So with our youth and with people in general, we have to lead them into encounter with Jesus before we're ever going to lead them to live by the truth of His Word.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely.
Well, we any closing thoughts? Just kind of as we begin to wrap it up, and I just want to give that last opportunity for you guys to share anything. We talked about a lot today. I think it's been really good.
I know. It kind of went a different direction.
I know.
It's okay. It's okay. It's good.
I don't think I have any.
So.
I know.
All right.
Come to Yaw Tuesdays,
yeah.
7:00 at the Smarts House.
Whoop whoop.
Shout out.
That's the real truth. If you are a young adult,
Yeah.
but for ages 18 through,
Whatever.
who cares?
30-ish.
39. Just kidding.
We can't put a cap on it.
If you're 18 and beyond, then by all means, if you have the heart of a young adult, that's me, guys.
Perfect.
Man, oh man, it's the place to be on
Yeah.
Tuesday nights for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Well, thank you guys so much for doing this with me today. It's been a great one, and the closing encouragement just to those of you who are listening and watching. Just we want to live like Jesus, and we want to show that to kids, not just our kids, but to kids that we encounter, and and what that looks like is not getting it right. It's not being perfect. It's not making all the right decisions. What that looks like for them is just loving them where they're at. The way that God has loved you, has given you grace for your life, for your failures, your mistakes. We want to love our youth. We want to love kids with that same amazing grace that saved our souls. And so, that's the challenge to you as you take these words that we've spoken today and hopefully process them and think about ways you can impact, the youth in our valley. I just want to encourage you just to start by just loving them. Like I said, give somebody a hug. Pick one kid to mentor. Start volunteering in youth ministry. We need more volunteers. Start volunteering
Always.
in kids ministry. We need more volunteers. But even more than that, start to love on the kids in your neighborhood. Start to love on your friends' kids. Don't just view them as, the kids, they go off in another room and play, but be engaged with them because you have no idea the impact that you're making in their lives. So we love you, and we'll see you next week on the podcast. Thanks for joining us.